Christmas is getting closer and closer, and if you're anything like me, you of course don't have any presents, especially not for the ones you don't care about. And well, I thought let's solve that at least a little bit in this video. Maybe I can help you out as well with some ideas. And that is just the right circumstance where this video comes in handy, because I'll show you exactly how to make the perfect gift for someone you care a little bit about, and for someone you'd rather send to the moon. These candles are made out of cement, for which I 3D printed the negative mold, after which I filled them with real beeswax. Especially the beeswax is important if you want to pretend like you care about the person you're gifting this to. Okay, before we get started, let me show you one thing. I love that font. It's my favorite. Who the hell is in charge for this? I mean, how can I take something like this serious when there's a font like this on there? I mean, it's nice and all, but that font though? So as always, I started by drawing a quick mock-up design in Fusion 360. I didn't really know what I wanted the candle to look like, so I started by simply creating a hollow square, just to get some inspiration. But I liked this design already quite a bit, and I realized that I didn't want to spend too much time on this Christmas present, so I quickly added some chamfers to increase the strength, and for the looks of course. I also didn't want to miss the opportunity to advertise my channel, so I added an imprint of my logo on one of the sides. Then I created a new body around the entire design and subtracted the original design out of that new body, leaving me with a perfect negative. I then cut the negative into 3 pieces so that I could release the mold later on. So these are the parts fresh off the printer. I think they came out alright. I mean, it's nothing to write home about, but the main issue I have is that I did have some stringing. You can see it especially here and there, and also on these corners, which is pretty annoying, but I will want to sand these corners anyway, so that I'll be able to stick them together properly without it leaking. I've got some sandpaper here. Let's see, this is 180 grit. And I think I'll just do like this. I'll also be sanding some of the layer lines here inside of the mold itself to knock the more prevalent layer lines off, because I think they're a bit bad. This one especially, I don't know what happened there, but there's a really big line. Here, let me take my t-shirt. There we go, that looks pretty nice, it's pretty smooth. Of course, now you can see the layer lines themselves much more, but I can tell that they are much smoother. You can't really feel the layer lines that much anymore. I got the idea of keeping the mold together using just some rubber bands from the YouTuber Further Fabrication. I guess I could have also used some tape, or maybe I could have designed the molds in a way that the parts would clip together, but I didn't. Although that may be something I will be tackling in another video. Yes, you heard me right. I'm not really happy with the outcome yet. I mean, it's fine to gift it to people like Jack or so, but it's not really up to my standard, I would say. But I will talk more about that later on. Moving on with the mold, I used some vegetable oil on the inner surfaces of the mold to help it release later on once the cement is set. And then I used some generic Portland cement that I got from the local home improvement store. I'm talking about Bauhaus to all my German bros out there. And yeah, I mixed it with water until the mixture just seemed pourable. Just as a word of caution, I guess, well, if you're pouring something that has to be mechanically strong, then you don't want to add as much water as I did, since its strength decreases with the amount of water that's in the mixture. You'll also want to add an aggregate like sand or rocks into the mixture to increase its strength even more. The YouTuber Practical Engineering actually made a great video about the properties of concrete, which of course is linked in the description below, and I highly recommend you watch it if you're interested in that kind of stuff. If I edit this correctly, and that's a very big if, then you'll see me tapping on the mold every now and then. I found that that really helped to remove the majority of the bubbles, and I also used the plastic prying tool to poke down into the mold to release any bigger cavities that might have formed. Another thing that you might want to consider is that the reaction of cement with water is actually an exothermic reaction. That means that the reaction is giving off energy in form from heat, and that's usually only a problem if you're using some kind of quick setting cement, or maybe you're not mixing it with sand or pebbles or so. And yeah, the main problem with that is that it might get so hot that it reaches the glass transition temperature, so the melting temperature of PLA, which is somewhere around 50 to 60 degrees Celsius, which is this amount in freedom units for all of you weirdos out there. And yeah, that might melt the form then, which would be pretty annoying. After the cement had set just a little bit, which took about an hour for this particular mix, I came back to scrape off the slag and to smooth out the surface. And after about 20 hours or so of curing time, when the cement had mostly cured, I tried to take the mold off. The sides came off great, but the inside, well, the inside didn't. At that point I realized that I had the logo on the wrong side as well, so I had it upside down. And I felt pretty stupid about that, but that way I didn't really felt so bad for throwing this part away. Although, now that I think of it, it might be a nice present for Jack, that piece of shit. Okay, after that failure I went back to my 3D model and I put a 7-degree angle on the inside of the walls, hoping that that would help get the mold out of the cement piece later on. I also sanded the surfaces down really well, much better than the first time, just to make it even smoother. I also went down to 400 grit sandpaper, which is pretty smooth as well, and that helped a ton. I forgot to put on natural gloves during the first pour, and I regretted that really quickly because cement produces calcium hydroxide when it comes in contact with water, and calcium hydroxide is really, really alkaline. And it basically causes chemical burns on your skin. So I had some cement on my hands, you know, and it started to itch. And it was itching like, I kid you not, for 10 hours maybe. It was super annoying. Maybe my skin is a bit sensitive to it, but yeah, just consider that. Maybe use some natural gloves if you're messing with cement. I won't go into detail with the second pour, but here's a little TLDR, and while you're watching that, I'll be heading home because it's freezing cold. Okay, let's take a look at this. Man, I hope so that this is going to work. Okay, that was pretty easy. That was pretty easy as well. Oh, I think I'm breaking the mold. Well, that's not how it's supposed to be. There we go, finally. So that worked out pretty well. So well, in fact, that I decided to print a smaller mold as well. Of course, the mold is not perfect, as the inside part is sacrificial, but other than that, I'd say it works pretty well. I wouldn't be happy with it for myself, but I guess it works well enough as a gift. While I was at it, I also wanted to print an even bigger mold for Gina, but that print failed at around 90%, and since she didn't let me copy her assignment that was due last week, I don't really feel like giving her anything anyway. Hello everyone and welcome to this new subsection I like to call Cooking with Konstantin. Today I'll show you how to process ephedra beeswax. For this recipe you'll need 2 pots, glühwein and beeswax. Let's get started. Okay, first we want to start off by preheating the glühwein so that we have something to drink in the process. So now we can start to process the wax. This is just some wax that I got from a local beekeeper, but you can also get it from Amazon, for example. They'll usually sell it in small pellets. Once your glühwein starts to show fumes, it's warm enough. At this point your alcohol will start to evaporate, and that's not what you want. So it's ready to drink. Don't overdo it with the heat, by the way, because beeswax will degrade at around 80 degrees Celsius, which is this amount in weirdo freedom units. Now that the beeswax is molten, I can show you what I did here. So I basically just took a piece of wick and I added some support on the bottom just by bending a piece of wire, and I'm hanging it like this on the other side as well for the small one, and now I can just fill them up. The wax has almost hardened, but I did notice one thing, and that is that the backside actually cracked. So I don't really know why that happens. My guess is that the cement wasn't really dry yet. I let it dry for about 24 hours after I took it out of the mold, which I knew wasn't really enough, but I was hoping that it would still work. Obviously it didn't, so you might want to wait at least maybe 2 days or so. Hey, it's me from the future. At this point I started rambling so much that I'll just oil it down for you like this. In an effort to hide the wax that showed along the crack, I applied some more wax with a paintbrush and used a small torch to let the wax wick into the concrete. The result was pretty patchy, but still way better than how it was. Alright, that's it. I'm pretty happy with the outcome. Now there are, of course, plenty of things I could have done differently, some of which I want to revisit in a future installment. For example, I really don't like the way that this inner part of the mold is sacrificial. It's just, I mean, it works, but it's not something I'm really proud of. I just realized that I've only really shown the candles from the front, so here's to make up for that. Now, Tom just uploaded a video that's very similar to this one, where he made a sign out of plaster. And as with all of his videos, that one is also really nice, and I've linked the video in the description, of course, down below. One thing that he did differently is that he printed the mold out of flexible filament, and I think that's a great idea. But I hope to be solving the molding problem in a different way than he did. I mean, just of course to be different, but also I'm not really a fan of flexible filament because it's just a pain to print. Yeah, it's not enjoyable to print that. One thing that probably would have prevented the crack from forming would have been to just slowly preheat the form before pouring the wax inside. But then again, I should have also just waited for the water to fully evaporate. So if you want to make these for someone, but you're thinking there's just not enough time to make these until Christmas, well, let me tell you that there is. Okay, here's the plan. Start the print right now, then go to your local hardware store and get concrete and pick up some candles. Of course, I like beeswax, but you can also pick up just normal candles. because you can melt the candles down and then you can use their wick as a wick for these candles. You could also, of course, cut up an old cotton t-shirt and then use strands of that as a wick for these, if you think that the wicks of the normal candles are a bit too thin. Once you've poured the cement, it takes about a day for the cement to cure enough until you can take it out of the mold. But then you can stick it into the oven at around 50 degrees Celsius. Now I haven't tried that, but I'm pretty sure it should work. And just leave it in there for a couple of hours until all the water is evaporated. All these steps can be done within 2 days, so good luck and don't tell anyone that you got the idea from me.